No, I don't know that
Oh
meeting.
man. So back in the day, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe, Favreau, before he was at Marvel, had this like 2 season run where it would basically be him and four other people having dinner at a restaurant. They just had like a Reservoir Dog style camera on rails
Oh,
going around it, but they would always start in the middle of a conversation. You wouldn't see the beginning. They didn't, no one cared about the beginning. You just see it
that's
like
kind of what this whole
halfway
weekly
through.
briefing is. This is just a continuation of the
Yeah.
conversation that you and I had. And what I was going to say is it took me till yesterday for my voice to recover from the
Oh my
conversation you
gosh.
and I had.
It
I
was nuts.
couldn't squeak out a word on Wednesday.
I had to force myself. I was taking honey and tea and everything because I still had a bunch more people to talk to. But it was what time did you leave? I know the car pulled up at 10:30, but it was like
No, are you talking about when I left? I dropped you off at 2:30 in the morning at
that's
your
right.
house. Yes.
It was a good conversation. I
Yeah.
don't think we can fit all that in an hour, but we
What,
should try.
what Ryan is saying is I asked the valet to bring my car up to the valet around 10:30 p.m. and we left at 2:30 p.m. But the bar, which we never even entered, we were just staying in the lobby,
Yeah.
closed around us, and we.
Yeah, they kind of did the whole classic you don't have to leave but you can't stay here kind of walk out. Like, would you like to come outside? It's really nice outside. So yeah, it was great. It
I'm going to
was very
spotlight the
fun.
two of us.
Cool.
This conversation, what we should start. Hey Ryan, good to see you.
Good to
Thanks for
see you
joining
too.
us.
Thank you.
Welcome to this weekly briefing with myself and Ryan Summers, as you can see. And if you're getting in the middle of our conversation, the conversation we're having is something we started last week in Los Angeles. We had a cohort dinner at the Sunset Marquis in downtown Hollywood. Beautiful location, by the way.
Mhm.
Um, and it was interesting conversation we had. We were kind of following up with the take what's yours thought
Yeah.
process of, hey, if you're going to make something, how do you know what it is and what are you pursuing and how do you go after it?
Mhm.
But one of the business owners expressed what the work that he did around winning projects.
Mhm.
And did somebody say they spent 80 hours on pitches to get something?
It was 80 hours, but the big number that really hit me was I'm making 40 pages, 50 pages. I feel like I have to make 80 pages just to have a shot. And that conversation off to the side just resonated with me so much that I felt like I was chasing after it and following up on questions because it hit me in the gut so hard as a person who struggled to figure out like 80 may not be the number you should be aiming for. 80 pages or 80 hours, both of those. And then we started talking afterwards, just like, am I wrong in thinking that that's maybe
Yeah.
not the right path?
Because and here's let's start from the beginning of what that process might be like, right? So you're a production company owner, agency owner, and you've been invited into winning a project. They
Mm-hmm.
want to see the work that you can do or how you would take the brief that they gave you and how that might play out. And it's not uncommon for people to go through the process. You and I both worked in Imaginary Forces back in the day, and I know for certain we overproduced that pitch process. But often we were asked and given money to pitch that, do the pitch process. Back then, we were a
Right.
part of a creative process, even when we were pitching. Um, and the thought is like, here's the creative exploration of the brief.
Mm-hmm.
What that seems to have turned into is this meat market of, hey, any agency can ask somebody to do a pitch for free, and you're all supposed to be clamoring for the job so bad that the person that puts the most effort into it, or that's what your hope is, maybe as a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
if I put enough effort into it, I am more likely to win the project than if I don't put effort into it. And I think that's what sparked the conversation because the business owner I was sitting next to said he spends 2.5 hours, he produces
Mm-hmm.
about 7 pages, and he's winning over 50% of his pitches. So
Yeah.
huge difference between someone spending almost 2 weeks of processing and then someone spending 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so many red flags went off because I was raised in that IF kind of mentality of like spectacle and awe and shock and wonder of like, look at all these dazzling personalities we have, and we could think of any possible permutation. Let us hit you with all of them. And that no matter who you may talk to, you will at least know we have the capability to do anything. Um, but I think in the new world where like you have to invest in that yourself as a company, and that's a huge hit, right? Like you have to make a decision that you're going to pay for that without any necessary return. Also the fact that most places don't keep the same staff on all the time, and now we're actually hiring freelance creative directors and designers, senior designers that do a lot of that work. Like that's a whole different kind of classification of cost as well. But to me, there's also just a huge amount of blowback in terms of like opportunity cost that you lose when you're dedicating that much time to one potential client. But I think that the squishier thing also is that you're sending signals to everyone that you don't have confidence, you don't necessarily have a specific vision, and you're also not valuing the true thing that you're selling to me, right? Like when you do that, it just feels like you're selling a menu,
So
right?
I
You're
agree
not
with you.
selling
Let's
everything
break that
else.
into like two major areas, because I think that's what you covered. One is
Mhm.
just effort and cost to you as a business
Yeah.
person, and what that means for you as, you know, obviously leads to burnout.
Hmm.
But there's a second part of that. We'll say it like the value or confidence part. So not just
Hmm.
calculable ideas of time, effort, energy, and the possibility of working on other projects or delivering something else,
Hmm.
even bringing on freelancers to do it, but also the confidence part. So the first part, let's just talk about that part of it. Like
Yeah.
there's a risk reward mechanism in winning every project, right? You're obviously trying to put some costs into it up front that are
Mhm.
lower than what the award's going to be.
Right.
If you are 80 hours into a project before it's awarded to you, and the project is, I mean, 100 hours worth of work, you better have a really good pitch. Like they should be buying it straight from the straight
Yeah.
from the delivery.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, hopefully that only takes 20 more hours to finish it, or I
Yeah,
mean, honestly,
exactly.
less than that. Hopefully that you're not breaking even. I mean, I come from the mentality, when I was at IF, we were still printing books as well,
Yeah,
right?
we were too.
So maybe I also have this effect of like carrying the box full of the books that were 80 pages each in, and just thinking like, oh my gosh, like, and that isn't even the full sum total of what we would do, right? You were fighting as a creative director or a designer to get the right to be in the book that like the ECD chose, right? So there were even more behind that didn't make it in. But I would always think every time I walked in the room, like, okay, so there's us. There's at least 3 or 4 other companies. I know one of those companies is probably going to do more than we could afford to do.
Mhm.
How can a client even parse through that and identify which idea they want and associate that with some type of like positive value to the studio that it went with? At that point, it's just this like gradient blend. It's like a blur, and it encourages them to just be like, well, you know what, I like this and maybe that other thing over here, and then they don't even know who they're picking, and then maybe you're only picking a studio based on cost or based
Mhm.
on previous relationship. And you may even, I've had it more happen more enough times where another studio pitches a great concept, we win, and they say, yeah, that was great that you did that, but we would really like that one over
This
there.
one,
Plus
yeah.
that first frame or your title treatment is fine, but we would really love the other 8 frames, because you're not allowing them to see who you are and your identity. And like there's always that common idea of like pitch 3, pitch the safe one, pitch the crazy one, the oddball one, and then the one that you want, and then hopefully they go to. That's fine, but when you have 80 pages and 12 concepts, there's no even way to delineate which ones those even are. My big thing to it is like, I forgot who said the quote, but story is an empathy machine, right? Like stories create empathy, and you should have a story that creates empathy for yourself, right? Like you should want to hire me because of the empathy you have for who I am. But also there needs to be empathy to the studio owner or the client or the person you're working for. Like make it easy for them to pick you, right?
Yeah.
Why are you going
Yeah.
to actually make it more difficult by spending so much more time because you have this emotional crutch of imposter syndrome, or somebody else is doing 40, so I better do 80, or someone's doing 2, so I should do 10. I think that's just so caught up in the emotional art, like beginning out as an artist mentality, that just exacerbates as you go further and further as a studio owner. If you came from the creative side, that you
So
have to
does
start
it
to
hurt?
divest yourself from that like mentality.
Does it hurt that bad to lose that it's worth burning all that effort and energy in the process? I mean, is it just uh, about your personal emotions, or
Mhm.
from the working with company owners that are in desperate need of a project, you can
Mhm.
get a sense of yeah, I really need this. As a matter of fact, it's been a few years, but I remember one company, they had brought me in. They had lost an unbelievable amount of
Mhm.
projects without winning one, and I want to
Yeah.
say there were 12 in a row or 15 in a row,
Mhm.
and they were just losing and losing,
Mhm.
and you could almost feel the energy of how desperate they were every
Yeah.
time they put a project out there. And I realized my
Mhm.
job was to really just be the cheerleader,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
able to say to them, this is great. You actually
Mhm.
can't, this is the one you can actually win with this one. It's not about, sure, it'd be nice for the other reasons to win this project, but this is actually something the client's really going to like, and to just
Mhm.
turn their attitude around and get rid of that weird desperate feeling, because you can
Mhm.
smell like the sharks with blood. Like it is
Yeah.
obvious when you're walking in there really, really
There,
desperate.
there's so much there to unpack, I think, because I watch a lot of demo reels. I have a class that I offer at School of Motion. I have Wednesdays where people can send me show reels, demo reels, student reels, studio reels, whatever. And I think just like within the first 3 shots, I can feel the fear and lack of confidence and desperation from a demo reel.
From the first
I
three
feel
shots.
3 shots, first 10 seconds, easily, like easily, like, right away. Most of the time, from the moment they put their name and what they use to describe what they want me to remember by, or don't do that. They just put like showreel 2022. Like immediately I'm like, oh, this is not someone who's confident themselves. I can feel it from the reel. I feel like most pitches, you can feel that when it's just like, here's our 8 ideas, here's the name for each one of them, let's go, right? There isn't a preamble, there isn't a statement of intent, there isn't some idea of why this studio's voice and vision and obsessions connect with the audience for the client side. I immediately just, you can feel that. And I think it just intensifies when you're like, and here's 8 ideas. We don't know which one's good. We hope you like one.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and it's just like, please, we make Chinese food, and we have pizza, and we have hamburgers, and we're, like, I don't want to be the cheesecake factory of creative studios,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to just have the biggest menu and hope that you come here and stay. But I also feel like, like what you said, it's much easier to lose a job you really want when you just made 8 pages versus 80. It's a much easier pill to swallow. But on the converse, I would much rather pitch 10 8-page jobs to totally different clients than one 80-page job as well, right? If I was just looking as an EP saying, oh, well, we could either spend our time for this one client and do this one killer gigantic deck, or I can go to 10 and do 8 pages, and that's all you have as a director or somebody to pitch. I would much rather go out and spend my effort that way. If I was just literally looking at as numbers on a spreadsheet, strategy wise, what do I do? I would rather do that in a heartbeat.
Well, what I like about what you just said is you already are expressing the decision to win
Mhm.
by making a choice of 10 8-page pitches, is to
Mhm.
say, oh, I understand what it takes to win and the amount of effort I need to put into each pitch at 8 pages. I'm
Mhm.
going to reduce my effort, or actually not even be true. It might take you the same amount of effort to get those 8 pages in some
Yeah. Oh,
aspects, some
absolutely.
cases, but you are actually working harder to add more clarity. And
Mhm.
here's what I like about that is that I honestly feel like clients want us to decide for them.
Yeah.
They don't, to give them a whole bunch of work to choose from
Mhm.
puts them in the driver's seat, and they could have just produced something in house at that point,
Yeah.
instead of recognizing that, wait, you're a professional organization, you have such a great ability and unique gift, can you express to me where I should be going with my concept,
Yeah.
and then
a
let that
thousand
ride.
percent.
If they don't choose it, that's
It's okay.
their prerogative. Yeah.
So there's, again, I feel like there's so much to say about this and unpack, because I really feel like as a client, they're coming to all these other different people, these studios along with you, because they're just hoping that they interact with someone that expresses a point of view and maybe has an insight to the problem they don't even totally know they're trying to solve yet, right? Like, you have to imagine on the other side, somebody who doesn't know the techniques, doesn't know the trends, doesn't know the tools, they ask 4 companies to pitch something, right? All 4 companies, most of the time, for the most part, pitch things that are literally indiscriminate. You can't tell the differences between the ideas for one shop,
Right.
let alone the other shops. So why not go in? And this is where I always say this, like right now, most studios I talk to, there is no difference between studio A to studio B to studio C, because they're just pitching the same stuff. We're fast, we're collaborative, we're digital, like all those things we always talk about in terms of positioning. But I always wonder why that there isn't a studio that positions itself as like, we're going to talk to you, we're going to ask a lot of questions, and we're going to pitch one idea, not a concept, just an idea that we want to ask you more. We're asking you to come with us because we want to collaborate with you. And here it is. Here's what we think we could do from what we heard from you. But this is not I wrote this thing down before I said, like, and I think this goes to the chart you talk about trying to move up the ladder, right? But like when you're pitching, you don't actually want to have the answer for the client that they ask you initially, because you haven't even gotten to the best question
I'm going to
yet
make you
for
slow
them.
down as you say this part, because this is really
Okay.
big. So say
So
that
we
last
think
part again,
we
because
think we
it's
think
going to.
there's we think that there's essentially like this matrix of possibilities. If I just pitch the right thing, I will get picked to make that thing for client X. But
Yes.
actually, I wrote it down to make sure I say it the right way. You don't want to have the answer yet because you haven't heard the best question, right? There are opportunities underneath the initial ask that you can't even imagine right now because you are so focused on winning the $20,000 job that you don't realize that in a year, there's a $2.5 million job if you can prove that you do more than just the things you list on your website. We do animation, we do modeling, we do,
Yes.
video. Like, you actually are undercutting yourself so much. That's like saying we take salt and we take potatoes and we make something for you, right? We make you a French fry, right? That's not what McDonald's sells.
That's not a
McDonald's
McDonald's
sells,
French fry. Exactly
right?
right.
Like, they're
Yeah.
selling the experience, the happiness, the speed, the availability, the nostalgia, like they're selling all of that as a, you know what, we'll say it one time, that's their position and their brand. Right now, all of everybody listening to their position and brand is the same thing. We'll make something for you, please. And if you ask us hard enough, we'll do it cheaper and faster than the next person.
Well,
Right.
so that concept too, that to think that your job is to walk into a pitch with the final answer
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit crazy too, instead of recognizing that the pitch process is to express your understanding of the current brief.
Right.
But
Right.
the creative process will evolve. It
Mm-hmm.
evolves from the award date to the delivery date. You don't think it's going to evolve from the
Mm-hmm.
pitch to the award date?
Well, you
Of
want
course.
it to,
There,
right?
there
That's
are,
how you would get closer to
yeah,
the client, by being able to show, oh, you thought you were asking this and you had an idea, vague idea of what the answer is, but I'm here to actually show you, you didn't even know what the real question was. Next time, before the question comes up, just call me. We'll figure it out together. Like, don't even call me for the video. Call me because you know what, you want to get promoted, or call me because you have this new product. You don't even know what to call it yet. And technically we don't do that, but we solved your problem in such a unique way that you should want to do, you should aim for that. Like,
and that's
I
a
think I
really
said this to
different
Joel.
pitch, isn't it? To say, hey, imagine this, right? Imagine the takeaway of this as part of the overall scope of this conversation too.
Mhm.
You're basically saying, what I'm about to present to you is not only what we would do, but how we would do it.
Yeah.
Now here's 80 pages. You figure out what you want me to do.
Yeah. You're,
The client's going to go, so when I work with you, what's going to happen is you're going to give me a bunch of stuff and I have to go work and go through all the stuff you've made.
1000%.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's what I want to hire somebody. And so instead of saying like, here's what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, here is a clear 12-page document that shows concepts, ideas, method, and practice. I'd say, okay, at least I know I can get to the finish line with you. And the frames you've chosen aren't exactly what I want. Let's talk about that. As a matter of fact, I liked this company's frames. They gave me 80 frames to choose from. So I'm going to choose frame number 69 and give it to you because I like your method over
you can
there.
make sense of it.
Yeah. And that's part of that relationship you're having, is this how process with the client as well.
It goes back to the idea of like an empathy machine. Like, I feel like instead of that long sentence that Joel always talks about that everybody has, like, I feel like most motion design shops should say we are an empathy machine, right? Like, we understand your
But if they all said
problem.
it, then they would be the
They
same.
couldn't, but here somebody could, right? Take that idea and run. But like, or at least I mean, so much of it is like how you express that positioning in your interaction versus what you literally write out on your website, right? Like, so much of what's written out doesn't mean anything if it doesn't match up to how you email, how you talk, how you respect someone, how you listen. Like, there's that whole idea of like, lots of people hear the client, but they don't listen to them because what comes back is just what they wanted to do, not what the client really actually needed. I mean, that's me. Like, it's taken me a long time to learn these things, but like, brevity and collaboration is a lot more than specificity and like gigantic, like overwhelming amount of like just things to overwhelm someone. And you have to be willing to potentially lose on that. But I think that the wins that you gain are much more than just the first job that hits your bottom line, right? It becomes, I say this to Joel all the time. Like, my biggest thing is that I learned over like IF and freelancing everywhere after that was like, I want to close the distance with every potential client from when they know what the deliverable is to when they had the first instance of wanting something. The first instance of like, you know what I want? I want to win an award. I want to get a promotion. I want our company to look cooler than Apple. And they don't even know what the like deliverable would make them do that. I want to be as close to the person that has that instant idea of, oh gosh, in our industry, this is the Apple. Why couldn't I be the Apple? They don't even know what they want, but they will call me to be like, oh, I heard you did this, or I saw you did that. Not the like, I need a 30-second video that 5 different companies could do. How fast can you make it? Like,
or all the way down to the award. I'm choosing you because of date, time, aspect, and you're basically again presenting the idea of anytime you're working with a client, there's a possibility of collaboration. And if you walk into, we'll say again, in this pitch process, if you walk in there with the desire to already have the answer, you've cut out that client and that collaboration with you. So again, they've learned, oh, you actually don't want to collaborate with me. you just want to press all the buttons and you want to control it all, or you want me to decide what to do up front so you have no variables in your
Mhm.
production process and
Yeah.
your life is easier. I don't know all the answers yet. I'm not really
Right.
sure how it's going to play itself out. I need to collaborate with you as a client, and that
Hmm.
openness in your how you present. So 12 solid pages, 8 solid pages, whatever that is, even 15 pages, whatever the best use of the material time that you have, get it out there to be clear. But the way you're presenting it too adds
Hmm.
all the depth to the project, more than trying to make every picture. I mean, every picture is
Yeah.
worth 1,000 words already. How many more words do you need than those
Hmm.
photos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like it always just comes down to what really understanding what a client is looking to you for, and how much can you divorce your original artist ego, your original, like what you thought you were supposed to be doing, to versus like what the person's actually calling you for. Like I hear people talk a lot about like qualifying leads, but in my mind, I have a different version that I think, where I try to imagine the person that I'm interacting with, that's like the stakeholder. Like I said, like needs versus wants, right? Like everybody needs a deliverable, but there's almost always something that if it's a category of what they might want, right? Like they might want to feel like an artist, right? Maybe they were a failed artist, or their brother went to school, or their dad was an artist and they got into the same, but they never actually took the time to be an artist, right? Like that's a profile, right?
yeah,
Maybe some people want to be viewed as a deep thinker or a tastemaker within their company. And those are the people who, if you can ever get them to start using your language in the conversations, that they're using it to look cool amongst their peers, right? Like there might be people who are just patrons that just want to be able to say, like when you work with big tech companies, sometimes they just want to be able to hire someone to make something that looks cooler than the rest of the peers in their department, right? And the faster you can identify that, like that true, like almost emotional personal want versus just the need, that's where I've been able to go and say, like, I've mentioned this probably before to you, Tim, but like you can take a job that's a $20,000 tech ask and turn that into like a 3-year millions of dollar engagement that would never even exist if you didn't just like ask the questions of someone.
yeah.
But you have to be open to that, right? You can't just jump to how fast can I get my team to make the book?
So let's talk practical for a minute. If
Yeah.
I How do we get to a point of view of what to include in a deck so I can cut
Mhm.
out 76 of the pages, or I guess 72 of the pages, and get down to the 8 pages?
I mean,
I'll
can I
start
share
with
stuff with you after you go through that? I have decks that I have prepared if you want to see them. I can share that practical if you'd like to see something.
sure. Yeah, some people actually do. Maybe we'll stay on for a few minutes
Sure.
after and you can do that. But let's just uh I'll start with one thing I think that's really important to walk into a deck and include in your presentation, that I think every client is looking for, and that's your voice.
A
So I want to make
thousand
sure that
percent.
from the first
Yes.
thing that you have and biggest thing you consider is your voice in the room. You've been invited to be part of a conversation, and who you are and what you do should be presented in your deck, in your presentation overall scope. Matter of fact, you can probably cut out a page if you're going to do it live, or have some kind of
Mhm.
verbal page, or be able to multiply page. But I think your voice is one of the first big things you want to have in presentation. You do one.
I mean, can I just reaffirm that and just express that a little bit? That like I think that is why most shops now, as motion design has solidified around like Cinema 4D and After Effects and a couple of other, like it has become so technique and technology driven that most studios, I do not see a voice or a point of view coming from it,
Mhm.
because you have to take your personal practice, and I always call them obsessions, and exercise those, express those, understand what that means. Because then also, what also happens besides that, I think that's a nice byproduct of this, is that if you have a vision or a voice or both of those, and you are pitching that voice constantly, you start to flip into this world where it's like, well, you know what, I'm going to make this thing with these kind of cool ideas, with these obsessions that I'm melding together uniquely, maybe with a different technology, platform or whatever. But you're going to make something because you're developing it outside of a specific client's ask.
Yeah.
You walk into the room all of a sudden and be like, I'm going to do something cool. I would love to be you, that I do this thing cool, this cool thing for, and we get to tie ourselves together at the hip. But if it's not you, that's fine, because I'm going to make it for 2 other companies, or you know what, I'm going to make it for myself. I'm going to own it. And it's not a position of like ego. It just changes the like temperature in the room, where all of a sudden you're like, hey, do you want to see this cool thing I'm doing? I think it might work for you.
Yeah.
Would you give me permission to share this with you?
And the business
And that
owner I was
changes the
sitting next to that
conversation.
said he does the 2 hour pitches, or it takes him 2 hours. His
Mhm.
voice is very clear.
Yeah.
And he,
Yeah.
he steps up into the room and basically says, "You know who I am. You know why I'm here. And you probably even know my voice, but here's how my voice would be played out." I'll
Yeah.
give you another thing I think you have to have in every presentation. You have to
Mhm.
have understanding. And what I mean by that is you have to show that you can understand what the project is, but also
Mhm.
you might need to understand the product that is inside the project,
Yes.
the client's voice, and the client's market.
Mhm.
So when you are pitching something, you should be able to easily present in the concepts that you have an understanding of that, not just something cool,
Mhm.
right? So you wanted to say like, well, I do really cool stuff for the Lakers. Maybe I should do really cool stuff for Coca-Cola the same way. Or like, no, Lakers and Coca-Cola are two different things.
Mhm.
So both Coca-Cola advertises the Lakers, but it's not the same product or opportunity or need or demographic. So your presentations have that. And again, that has to be incorporated in the designs. And this
Mhm.
is where if it takes 80 frames or 80 pages of frames to show that you have an understanding of that product line, then you're proving you're not an expert. And that's
Mhm.
why you're not going to be accepted into the final rounds of the conversation or ever chosen, because you
Mhm.
haven't stepped into some adding that clarity.
Yeah, I think to complement understanding, or maybe a practical application of that, is I always go back to research. And I don't think that necessarily means like research like the property or research like competition. I mean like research the people you're going to be pitching to. Like the first thing I do when I find out like there's a job, I immediately ask like who will be in the room, who will be reading this, who's on Zoom, and I research like their LinkedIn. I go to their Instagram. I go to any possible touch point I can have now and in the past to try to understand like those wants again, right? And sometimes it means I need to research like the market. Like, okay, a best example, right? Like, I know someone who has a ridiculously successful comic book that's turned into like a children's graphic novel. But when he started, he was just making this book and he was trying to imagine how he could make something for a specific audience, right? Like the final reader. But after 2 years of realizing that it was not working, he went to not to like a comic book convention, but he went to a retailer's convention and he started doing research and just brought his book and went to all of the retailers, the distribution companies, said, why is my book not working? I know it's better, it looks better, it's better written. And they started talking about all the practical reasons why that book would never show up in that retailer's store. And it had nothing to do with creative, it had nothing to do with content, everything to do with distribution, with marketing, with things he never even thought mattered, because he just focused on, like us, I got to make better art. My art's got to be better. My art's not good
Yeah.
enough. It's not smart enough.
So the best art
And
wins. Yeah.
yeah, so I that opened my eyes when I heard that story, that that's how this book kind of cut through from a very small person. And I've tried to adopt that as much, that there may be a customer before who you think your customer is, or an audience before your final audience that you actually need to speak to first to be able to get
Well,
access to that bigger
there's
audience.
some age or sage kind of idea of best-selling author should focus on the word selling and not author, right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
if that's what you're going to be, a best-selling
Yeah.
author, you should worry about the selling part of it, not the other part.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
one last thing I think that we need to have included in every pitch, so that the client understands, is I think that it should have some sort of idea of what the method would be that you're
Hmm.
going to get it done. So this is going to be in your ideas and concepts. When we say method, that can be as basic as, hey, we're going to do 2D and 3D and so
Hmm.
on. That would be the most raw elements of what's there. And it's usually on a page. Here's a
Hmm.
3D element, here's a 2D element, kind of get something done. Here's a hand-drawn animation, whatever.
Hmm.
But I think in the overall presentation, that method can actually have a deeper roots in how you can accomplish and get it delivered. Because what the
Hmm.
client wants to know is, when I work with you, you will get the product finished.
Yeah.
And now I could take someone else's frame and give it to you. Not that you would ever say yes to it because of integrity, but that's why clients choose your
Hmm.
frames and hand it off to another production company. Is often they've lost confidence in your ability to deliver.
Right.
So your presentation has to have those three core elements. If those core elements, your voice, your confidence, or voice, understanding, and method, are part of your presentation, now please go design something that also looks really gorgeous, meets the aesthetic quality that the client is looking for out of your
Hmm.
agency or your production company. You've been chosen already. I want to pick that out. Like, the
Hmm.
fact that you're presenting means you have already been chosen. You don't have to ask to be chosen. You have
Right.
been chosen. Now just step up into the role that you've been chosen for and do that work. Makes life a lot easier, and gets that winning cycle down to
Yeah.
something that's manageable.
I mean, I don't know how many other people have experienced this, but I can't tell you how many times where you get asked to pitch, you do the pitch, and you're basically begging for like like authority to be able to pitch. You put the deck together. If you actually win, how many times does that work actually just get scrapped? Like, no, we really like just the way you talked about this. Now let's really start talking about the pitch, but it's been awarded to you, right?
Yeah.
That's happened to me so many times where I'm like, well, why did you guys pick me if you're not going with any of the ideas, right? You want to start over. So I've tried to walk into the room as much as I can, being mindful of like ego versus humility, as if I already won the pitch. And now we're really getting into the like real questions of what do you want? Because there is a little bit of that kind of like first date mentality of like when you go in and you don't want to offend anybody and they're not really sure what they want, but they don't want to expose that they don't know what they want. So you're kind of dancing around and you're even pitching in that kind of like mentality.
Yes.
But I've had it so many times where I win and then they're like, cool, now can we really start working?
Yeah.
And
Now
you
that it's
find out
in
the real
motion,
answers.
let's change everything. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And then you almost kind of like pitch again. So if I can walk in as if like I've done my research, I have my voice and vision, I know I'm not going to do 80 pages. I'm going to do a very collaborative, open. I would say the other thing I always try to add that we haven't brought up is it's amazing to me how many times people don't include questions in their pitch. Even in just in terms of positioning what you're going to show. If you position something where it's like, instead of saying this idea is the way to do X, you're like, wouldn't it be interesting if we actually asked our viewers X? And then you explain how you would ask that question to the viewer. And a lot of this sometimes comes from like having to do a lot of title sequences and finding new ways to ask those questions. But I've started trying to add that to experiential and to branding and to campaigns where it's like, what are we actually trying to do here? Right?
We
Like
could probably do a whole episode just about questions. It's so interesting to me how often people try to avoid questions because they believe that they've missed something or done something wrong if they've created something that someone has to ask them a question in return.
Yeah.
And that internal process almost feels like they wished that they would have answered the question before someone asked it. And that is so corruptive on an actual engagement process. You actually want to inspire questions. That's the overall curiosity.
Yeah.
Hey, so it's 12 or 2:33. So I want to be sensitive that this is usually when we cut ourselves off from the half-hour conversation. So if this is where you have to cut yourself off, we will keep on recording. But it seems like Ryan has brought homework to share and show. And if you can't tell why Ryan and I took another 4 extra hours the other night to talk, now you know. We both talk very fast. We have a lot of ideas and we can't slow it down. So I will try to keep this to just another 10 or 15 minutes here because we can go on forever. But I think it would be great if you had some examples of things to show that people can see and kind of start processing what they are doing or not doing differently here.
Well, I can show you that, like just to give you bona fides, like the cautionary tale to where I decided I wasn't going to do this anymore. First, can we also just like even open it up in case people want to ask questions to just drop them in the chat and we can answer them if there are questions about stuff as I'm showing this.
So far, we just have Robin and saying amen to us. So we did something right.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share screens first because this is a deck from, I guess it's almost 10 years ago now where I kind of started thinking I was doing something wrong. And I won't go through this whole thing, but my partner Miguel and I, when we worked at Imaginary Forces, got asked to pitch on this thing for Icebreakers, and we wanted it really bad because the previous creative director had just left IF, started his own company, and wanted to basically keep this conversation going with this client, and we wanted to bring it back to IF. So it was basically a spot for Icebreakers, just these little mints that they were going to have a watermelon flavor. They wanted it to feel like the Olympics. And I won't go through the whole thing, but I'll show you how far we went down the rabbit hole of trying to explain what we would do. We did a casting call for watermelons. We literally like did a casting call. We looked for all the different watermelons. We started telling people how we would shoot and make these watermelons look beautiful, why we picked it, right? So it's just endless, right? And if you can see here, this just goes on and on and on. And I'll look at that. It's actually, I didn't mean to do this. It's 81 pages long of just research and reference. But that wasn't the only thing we did. We also, and this is just initial pitch, unpaid, competitive against 3 other companies. We did storyboards.
Wow. As part of your
storyboards.
Pitch. Yeah, right.
Yep, full storyboards. There's a whole.
It's already worked out. Don't ask us any questions. We have it all figured out.
We did additional
give us
concepts.
The paycheck now.
Yes, we did additional concepts to say, hey, we can have you in the conversation. We did viz dev. We did full frames.
Oh my gosh, Ryan.
Round 4. Oh, well, don't wait. It gets, okay, so here's what it could look like. We figured out the story. We figured out what it could look like.
Please tell me that you have a running finished product at the end of this thing.
Just wait. Oh, it gets good. This is the best story I think I have that I can speak publicly on. We talked about scale, like if you guys want to be small or big, we could do that. And then we even did what you mentioned. We showed how we would build it because, let me see if I can find this.
You even showed how you would build it.
Oh, no, we didn't just show how we could build it. Do you see that?
No, I only see the PDF.
Oh, here's what I'll do. Let me stop. I think I just have to be able to show scare. Because we didn't just do that. Let's do screen. Yeah, that was the problem. Screen share. Let me play this. Let me know if you can see this.
Yeah.
We built the 3D photorealistic watermelon.
Oh my gosh.
And because I'm a crazy person, you have to imagine Ice Ice Baby running underneath this because I didn't turn on the audio. I previs the entire commercial, the whole thing, right? So there's the whole commercial there with voiceover and Ice Ice Baby saying we should do
The
it.
only thing I do is give you a paycheck and you were done. Why even question it? Yeah.
And we even did what you said. We said what our whole pipeline would be, right? So this is 81 pages, thank you, everything you do. So we didn't win the job, but 3 months later, I don't know if you can see this. This is the actual commercial.
Come on. Are you serious?
I'm not joking. This is literally shot for shot my previs with our viz dev, with our concept. That animation is actually literally my animation. So what turned out was exactly what you warned us against, Tim, was we did everything. The company went with the person they trusted and told the company, we want what that studio did. Yeah. I know this is true because the owner of that company called me a day after it was released and said, hey, just so you know, I don't want you to be upset. They told us to do this. And actually, I couldn't get my animators to animate as good as your previs. So would you come here? I'd love to hire you as a creative director. And I told him no, because I'm like, you stole my work. Thanks for the
compliment. Right. Your integrity is worth garbage. But.
So this is not coming from a place of theory when I say these things, right? In 2014, I made the decision I never wanted to do this again, if my own company, freelance, whatever. So it has taken me a journey to get to the point where I want to kind of share. And again, I have a deck here for something that I stripped out the client. But this was fairly recently. I pitched against that studio that I left. And you'll notice here, I had 5 days to put a deck together against 3 other studios. There are no actual keyframes. I didn't make any art for this. But what I did was I tried to create a conversation with a showrunner that needed an opening for an animated show that wanted to be a live action director and loved monsters. The show's about monsters. I have the same love, but I did a lot of research and I just tried to play to their need, not their needs, their wants. They need a 30-second opening, right? But their want is to be a respected director dealing with these type of subject matter. And I didn't really pitch them an idea, right? I just told them about the show. I told them about what I heard, what I was listening to, and what I thought they wanted. I pitched 4 paragraphs about what the actual story could be. But then after that, all I did was talk to them about techniques that I wanted to use, right? Just these ideas, these are things we could do. What do you like from this? What excites you? What makes you interested? And we just did all of this just in the pitch. And I think it's 15 pages, 16 pages at the most, right? Just calling out these categories of techniques and then saying why I thought they were interested and asking questions, saying, imagine our characters, not me saying your characters are going to do this. I'm like, what would it look like in your head if we did something like this? Do you like choreography? Do you like K-pop? Do you like classical dance? Do you like the gorillas? These are all things I like that I think I've heard you say. And then same thing, right? Do you like big, bold design? This is what I think about when I say big, bold design. I like using texture patterns. I like using these colors. I'm not saying this is what we're going to do because I don't know the answers. I don't know what you really want, but if you pick me, this is the way we would work together.
We collaborate together like this.
And these are, again, this is my vision. These are all things, all these different visual things and these ideas, these names, these kind of concepts. These are things that have showed up in a bunch of my other pitches, right? But I don't feel bad that I'm stealing from another pitch for another because these are just my obsessions. This is me. This isn't oh yeah, I made 4 boards that didn't sell, so I'm selling the 4 boards again, right? The frames themselves. So that took me a very long time to get there. I beat out the other 3 studios as a solo creative director versus shops we all know and love the names of.
And your takeaway is because one, you had clarity of what it's like to work with you, right? Mm-hmm. An understanding of what the process would be. So you put yourself forward, but you were also very clear on the directions you go. You've done some research. You have an understanding of the marketplace. Even just the 2 quotes at the very beginning, I almost feel like that could just be a pitch. Hey, yeah, let's agree on this. Okay, cool. Let's get started. Mm-hmm. Right. And if the next 4 weeks, we can deliver.
Yeah. I mean, I say it about all the time when you hire people, right? Maybe you hire people 51% for their skills, like an artist, right? It's someone for your studio, someone to go staff. But I firmly believe I made the mistake the other way when I didn't do this. 49% of it is the person and what they bring and their ideas. And are they cool to sit next to you? And can you imagine them coming to a room and giving you an amazing opinion out of nowhere, right? I've taken that attitude towards my pitches. Well, you know what, if you're not interested in the same stuff I'm interested in, and you don't think that we're going to vibe just based on what we like and the way we like speaking to each other, then go with the company that's just got the thing already figured out, right? I have these other things that I'm going to think about and things I'm going to work about. Someone that I'm going to talk to is going to want to use them, or I'm going to make my own thing. And then you're going to want it once you see it to be part of your product. So a lot of it is just mentality. and like philosophy. The other one is, I won't show this whole deck, but there's this project where we had made at the studio I was at, had made a lot of stuff for the Las Vegas Strip. So we knew that just the personality of the strip really well, but there was a shopping mall that basically was going to get gutted, and they were talking to 5 architecture firms. I'm not an architecture firm, but we were friendly with one who said, hey, would you just look at this? And again, for like 50 grand, would you just consult on us to tell us like what we could do? Like with this space, like, is there anything in this space with
So
technology
you
you're
were
aware
paid
of?
up front to come up with
We're
a
paid up
concept.
front to just basically, not even to come up with the concept. They were just like, could you just tell us, like, is there technology that we could just add a page to the deck? Like, is there something with VR? Is there something with drones? Like, just look at, they already had a preformed concept. They were basically going to turn this shopping mall that's on the Las Vegas Strip into Hollywood and Highland, right? Like basically just like actors on the stage or on the walking through, pretend to be like, different characters from movies, and they're going to have Deadline Hollywood or Access Hollywood do live remotes from there, like this very cliche, cheesy thing.
Sure.
And I basically pitched him, was like, let's do something totally different. I said, do you mind if I don't suggest technology? Do you mind if I suggest a story? And this deck, again, this is all like, there's a lot of architectural stuff. We had no budget to actually like make concepts. But I said, could I cut like a 30-second video that tells the story, why this place could be? And I just want to write one page. Could I just write a page in your deck at the top of the deck about what the place could actually be like when you walk in as a customer? Because the problem is, this place literally, it has tons of foot traffic, but it's the only reason it has foot traffic is because it's the only place that has free parking on the back side of the Las Vegas Strip. Have tons of people
Right.
walking through to get to the Bellagio
Captive
across the
audience to
street.
go to where they really want to go. Yes.
But it's just basically like a very turn like a basic shopping mall, right? That you'd see anywhere in the Midwest. There's literally no character to it all.
Sure.
Except for back in the late 80s, they had one small section that looked like the Mediterranean. There was like this like themed Disney style area that had a water fountain and lasers, and it looked like it had the Mediterranean, and there was a ceiling, and they wanted to demolish it. And they were taking bids on demolition. I was like, no, you need to take that and extend it through the rest of the space and give it a reason for being. It's waiting for a story, and you don't even realize it. You're going to throw it away. So I was told specifically, we went in, we pitched this. There's a couple other images that go along with this, with what basically we were going to put screens everywhere, but we would never call them screens. They would be windows. And essentially there was another world, like another plane of existence sitting on top of the shopping mall.
A window into another.
So you would see the window into it. You can never go through it, but there were characters that would follow you and track you.
You can get us to go through it. That'd be a real experience.
Yeah. 5 years. Give me 5 years. Apple glass. Yeah. Give me Apple glasses and we'll do it. Yeah. So basically I was told, so this was a $50,000 ask. We waived the $50,000 fee to ask if you're going to actually be a partner in the pitch. Let us come in as like equity partners on it. We pitched the story. We pitched the technology. They pitched all the architectural stuff. We went up against Gensler and 3 other major gigantic architecture firms. This was a very small architecture firm in Atlanta. We won the job. The job grew from a $5 million job for the architecture firm to a $25 million job. We went from 50,000 to I think 2.5 or $3 million for the studio I was at. And it was a 1.5-year engagement that then, we hired animation studios, we hired technology firms to come in and do it, but all from just recognizing like, you know what, I feel like I've gotten better at writing. And this literally was something we were asked on Monday. We were asked to give like a tech thing for like Thursday. On Wednesday, I spent Monday and Tuesday researching and thinking. Wednesday, I wrote this. We flew out Thursday. We won the job. And I wasn't supposed to be on the call, but the key person on the final client side called the architecture firm, not knowing me there. And they said, you guys specifically won this whole job and grew it because of this page.
Wow, that's amazing.
This story,
and it's a page in black and white.
It literally is words. It literally is words. And there were supporting images that the architecture firm made, but like I could show you 1 or 2. They were the worst pages in the book.
Before you jump off that page real quick.
Yeah.
What do you think the core to your writing is? And we have to probably wrap up.
The core to this was, no one else was pitching a reason for this place to spend $25 million on it. No one pitched a reason for this place to be in a world full of story and identity. This shopping mall just would have had a new slap of paint on it, new flooring. They would have removed anything that did have character and make it characterless. And we said, what if we do the opposite? What if we actually embrace the actual story that's here and lean into it, believe in it, make people believe in it, and make it a place that people would come back to? That's for the purpose of the place, not for the purpose of
you actually gave that place a voice. Yeah, that's what made a difference.
And this has nothing to do with doing 80 pages, nothing to do with Photoshop, Houdini, learning new technology. It doesn't even have anything to do with real time or Unreal or any of that stuff. It literally was. And I will say the reason I pitched this is that for the last 10 years, I've been looking for a project. We're going to talk about voice or vision. I've been looking for a project to combine the world that I love, the world building I love of Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki and, really beautiful anime with the like kind of physicality of the best National Geographic photographers. And that's
really
basically what I
awesome.
told them. I was like, what if you could go into a world and experience it with the most level of sophistication, but a world you've never seen before. And that world lives alongside the space that no one even knows exists. They don't even know the name of this place right now.
Well, Ryan, I have to say, I'm really disappointed that you didn't show or express any passion in the work that you're doing here. It really just falls dead when you talk about
I'm sorry.
this.
I'll try that. I'll level up. I'll get more caffeine next time. I'll have a coffee.
Yeah, right. No, really amazing. And I think I appreciate you bringing the real life experience into our theoretical conversation, because we can talk all we want, but to know with certainty that there are wins out there. And too many of us want to apply more effort expecting greater return, and that usually shoots us in the foot for one way or another. And I have a feeling we know that inside, but we don't know why. And then when you show an example like that, it can give people a sense of how easy it can be, or the clarity of what you're looking for, more than just trying to get rid of 72 pages, but not actually change the effort you put into those 8 pages you end up with. Thank you so much for being part of this.
This is amazing. I really appreciate it.
If I were to say I exist so we thrive in business, life, and career, but I'm going to say Ryan Summers also exists so we can thrive in business, life, and career.
Absolutely.
It's so great to have you part of the dinner last week. Thanks for sharing there too and being part of that. And for any of you that have additional questions, Ryan is on Community. You can always hit him up. He is very active in Community. So join us at community.revthink.com. You can do this. And if I know Ryan well, he's going to post some of these examples out there. This replay is also available. So your friends want to watch it.
And I just want to say thank you to everyone else, because I do suffer from imposter syndrome whenever I'm in here, because I'm not a studio owner. I feel like I have sympathy for, but I'm not living like the journey you all are living. So I appreciate the hard choices and the questions as much as anyone else. So thank you.
It's amazing. All right. Thank you all. Until next week briefing. It's great to be with you. Thank you all for being part of our life and in our community. And we look forward to serving you more. So until next week, you have a great week. And Ryan, thanks again for everything that you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.